Okay, so today's Daily Cyber is going to be very interesting. We're going to be talking to Catherine Moore, who's a social worker in the United States. We're going to be talking about the mental health issues and concerns around COVID-19, what she's seeing from medical professionals, as well as what's going on in the general population from her point of view and who she's working with. So this is going to be a really interesting episode, specifically about mental health. So grab a coffee, grab a tea, and let's hack at it. So hi, Catherine. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Brandon?
Not bad. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a level of excitement, but also concern with the COVID-19 scenario and everything that's going on, right?
Yes. I'm just excited to be here to talk about everything going on with someone who is kind of on the outside and not directly in my family or close circle.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it's kind of challenging, right, to be able to have certain conversations because you got to be careful. Like, if you say too much, people get fearful and worried. And I mean, this is kind of our conversation today, looking at mental health and the concern of it, because we're seeing the posts on social media, we're seeing the actual mainstream media, and if you consume all that, I mean, most people would be sitting in a chair just rocking away. Oh my God, I don't want to go outside.
Yes.
With their toilet paper, of course.
Yes. Massive amounts of toilet paper.
So as a social worker, what are you seeing through this COVID-19 pandemic?
So there's a lot of changes going on, a lot of fear. A lot of it boils down to fear of the public and fear of the unknown. This COVID-19 virus is new. We've never seen anything like it. It's shifting the way our society is operating, and it's really forcing us to change and honestly kind of pushing us to the brink of coping. It's making us really focus on all of our, I would say I focus on the strengths, on the things that we have, but that's my coping mechanism. A lot of people don't have that. It's taken me years to condition myself to look at the good things going on.
Right.
Which in social work, there's so many bad things. You meet people who just seemingly have nothing going for them, but you have to find those good things. So that's what I'm used to doing.
Right.
So what I'm seeing is just a lot of people that are fearful, and this leads to the scarcity mindset, the hoarding of toilet paper, of food, of meat, of canned goods, of everything, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And that causes anxiety.
Right.
Even for myself, I have all of these coping mechanisms and all of these tools that I know how to use and I use on a daily basis. But even for me, there was that day where I said, oh, no.
Right.
I need to go out and stock up on my food. And me spending $200 on groceries bought me such peace of mind, just knowing that if I need it, it's there.
Right.
And that can go a long way. So if people really need to do that, then do that for themselves. As long as you're not hurting anyone else or stealing from anyone else, you're doing it in a respectful way, then do that. Because it can go a long way in just alleviating that anxiety. And it's making sure that you're prepared. So
Right.
we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst.
Now, talking about that, like coping mechanisms, and I really want to kind of dive deep because there's probably a lot of people that have fears, anxiety, stressors around the COVID-19 that might not have healthy coping mechanisms to be able to deal with the stressors. And like you said, they're hoarding, there's, listen to mainstream news or even social media news, and they're getting all panicked, right? Like, what am I going to do? Like, this is going to go on. Some of the concerns that I'm hearing is that, this is going to be going on for like 6 months to 1 year. The economy is going to crash, right? I'm not going to make any money. There's huge layoffs going right now. Like, all these concerns they're having. What are some coping mechanisms that you would recommend people start to look at for themselves, for their own mental health?
So that's a good question. And I don't want to minimize any of the things that are going on, because it is a lot when you're looking at a job loss and bills that need to be paid. And those are things that are honestly outside of our control. And I would encourage people to focus on what they have control over. And that's your first thing, is focus on what you are thinking about and what you're bringing into your mind.
Okay.
So it is good to be educated and know what's going on, but you don't need to be watching the news all day.
Right.
You listening to terrible, awful things all day and COVID stories. So listen to it for an hour or whatever time that you're comfortable with, 30 minutes to kind of get the updates, and that's it.
So now
and don't do it anymore.
So let's talk about that. Should they be more aware of their emotion? If they feel stress, anxiety, then they should shut it off. Like, should that kind of be their benchmark and kind of measurement when it comes to their own feeling? Like, once they start to feel their heart rate start to increase, the anxiety, they should kind of shut off, walk away, do something else?
It depends. So with that, because it is good to be informed, and the reality of situations, because I work with people who are very sick and they get bad news, like a cancer diagnosis, for example. Right. So you can't necessarily tune out of that conversation. So you have to, absorb it and take in what you can. And the luxury that we have right now is we can turn off the news.
Right.
We can just log out of Facebook. So focus on what you can control, be educated, know what you have to do, and do that. So, for example, you watch the news, oh my gosh, people are getting sicker and dying every day. That's what I see on the news. That's what I saw this morning. So I was like, okay, no real big updates there. We know that that's going to happen. We know that that's a trajectory. So what can I do? I can stay home. I can not go to the grocery store. I bought 2 gallons of milk instead of 1 because I'm not planning to go to the grocery store for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And I know that, things like that. So that reduces my anxiety by being prepared. And I tune out, I focus on what I can control. So I can control my family, I control my hygiene, I can control, the news that I watch, the books that I read. I can focus on other things. So things like work, self-improvement, reading a book, watching a comedy, jogging, and try and do exercise. That right there, exercise or getting your body into a different physiology is going to go a very long way in shifting your mindset.
Right.
Because at least for me, I'm not in super good shape, but if I'm running, I'm like, oh my gosh, let me just try to go and go and go and breathe. And it gets me out of all the terrible things going on and focusing on myself and what I need to do to just be in that activity, to be in the moment, which is mindfulness.
Right. And then
being in the moment.
It releases endorphins and so forth, which helps with
Sure.
with the stress hormones and so forth. So any medical professionals, any guy, personal trainers that are watching this, you can, chime in about that. That exercise is so great to be able to help with stress and help with anxiety and so forth as well. One thing we'll talk about a little bit later, you mentioned control. I think right now we have to be mindful too of what we consider as control too of ourselves and in our environment too, because we'll talk a little bit more, and just to give people some context, we're going to be talking about domestic abuse a little bit later, but having that control too is control of yourself and your emotion, your energy, not too much of the environment and taking too much control over that. And like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit later, because I think right now we're seeing a lot of anxiety and stress because people are trapped. People, are in their homes. They can't get out there. They want to do things. They want to work. They want to go to the store. They want to go to the gym. They want to go to the movies. They want to do all this, but now it's, no, you can't. You have to be quarantined in your house, stay there. And there's all these restrictions coming down. So the anxiety is starting to build. And those are great tips, I think, is eat right, exercise, meditate, read a good book, all those other things. And like you said, the reason why I was talking about the news and kind of cutting it off at a certain point, at a certain time, because I think some people start to go down that rabbit hole of watching the news, then going on social media and doing all this. And then the anxiety starts going, like, it's the end of the days. It's World War Z. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see Brad Pitt running through in a second, right?
Yeah.
Kind of analogy, right? But it's like, okay, hold on. Like, you got to kind of take in the facts. And then if you're getting too anxious, one of my recommendation, I would love to hear your opinions, is go talk to someone. someone that's a
Mhm.
professional that, can say and put it in context for you. Yes, this is going on, but you can do this. Yes, this is happening, but you can do that, versus someone that is stressed out as well going, there's no money in the economy. Oh my God, what's going to do? And they're saying I just lost my job. And now both of you are stressed together.
It's true.
Talk to people that can give you context, everything, kind of that energy.
Yeah. So we can call that talk therapy.
Yeah.
Which is extremely powerful because especially with anxiety, all of our thoughts are kind of trapped in our head and going around and around and around. If we just simply say things out loud, it gets it out there, it gets it off of our chest, out of our minds, and it allows us to process it in a different way. So yes, call somebody who is going to be good for you. So there's people who are good for us and make us feel good and lift us higher. And then there's the other people who require energy of us.
Right.
That almost like take energy from us. Don't call that person quite yet. You need to be in a good, positive mind state if possible when you're talking to those people who drain the energy from you. But there are a lot of hotlines. There's so many hotlines that you could call and just talk to people. And they're volunteers. They're people who want to talk to people like that. They are giving their time and they choose to sit on the phones waiting for your call just to talk to you.
Right. For sure.
And there's people who really value you as a human being. This does not have to be the end all for people. And there are people who care about them. And it does help a lot to talk about it. I know a lot of people have told me, why am I going to tell you my problems? That's not going to change anything.
Right.
You're right. I can't change your problems and I can't take them away. But what we can do is we can work on a new way of reframing your problems, figuring out ways to reduce them or eliminate them altogether.
Right.
Because when you're able to think clearly about a problem, that's when you come up with the good solutions.
For sure. And I mean, one of the things I learned was asking good questions, like first getting them out of their primal instinct of fight, flight, or freeze, right? Because a lot of times they're in that emotional state where you can't think logically. You can't think, oh, I can do step 1, step 2, step 3, and then I'm out of this situation, right? When you're in fight, flight, or freeze, you're running from a tiger, do I get eaten, right? Do I fight that tiger or do I sit there and get freeze and then get eaten anyways, right? Like one of those. So you can't really think logically of mathematical problems, all that. So if you can talk to someone like yourself, or a professional, they kind of help you kind of de-escalate and then be able to go, oh, so what about this? And then you're like, you know what? I could have done this, this, and this, and it would have been so much better.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. And professionals are all over the place. So I work for a health insurance, a medical group.
Right.
So medical groups have social workers. I'm not going to send you to a hospital. Don't go there. You have to, but they have social workers there too if you happen to go there. But they have hotlines. They have what you can call warm lines.
Right.
I know I'm here in California, so they have one in each, like Orange County, LA County. There's probably warm lines all over the place. There's national mental health support lines that I can send you the information for if you think that your listeners would like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, anything that would help. I know for you guys can Google this too, right? Google any helplines or support lines, anything along that line. I know in Ontario we have telehealth, which is for medical questions and concerns. I know there's different hotlines, like you said here. So all you have to do is really kind of Google it, and there's a lot of support out there. Family members, again, are really great to reach out to. Friends that you have that good relationship. So there's so many people out there, especially as we're all going through this pandemic. And there's different support groups too, in the sense of online. I'm starting to see Skype and Zoom groups where people are just kind of meeting up and just chatting, right? And just sharing their concerns and sharing what's going on. So like there's a lot out there. Just don't feel you're alone. I know some of the signs, and you can talk to a little about this, about depression, right? Some people like to isolate, or you don't like to, but as the feeling comes up, you isolate yourself. You don't like to talk to people because you're kind of, going through that. Try to reverse that and start talking to someone immediately. When you feel those feelings that you don't want to talk to anyone, you want to kind of be isolated.
It's true. That is one of the first signs. The other signs would be the signs of depression is that you are no longer motivated to do the things that you once liked to do.
Right.
So if you like to watch, whatever TV show and you're like, there's no point, I don't want to, that's a red flag. If your eating habits change, if they increase or decrease, if you are sleeping more or less than what you would normally do, that's going to be a big sign. So it's important to check in with ourselves and see, and reach out to people. You would be surprised just the amount of love and support that's out there if you just reach out. And it's not even going to be in one avenue. It's going to be in multiple avenues. So, and all of the supports that you can get, bring them all in. And
Right.
this is what I do. I have to do it every single day because I'm around it, and I'm kind of engulfed in the COVID-19 conversation every single day. At the end of the day, I think like, okay, is there someone that I can call that lifts me up? That's going to be my sister and maybe my best friend. My husband. I talk to my husband all the time, but he, we each need we need our space sometimes because we talk to each other all day, every day, and it's like, anyways.
Yeah, you need you need the healthy balance.
Exactly, it's good, but we all need more than one person. We can't rely on one person to be all of our emotional support.
Right.
So I encourage him to go out and reach out to his friends, because everyone that you reach out to in each different avenue is going to give you something a little bit different. So friends, supportive groups online, you can call the hotline, you can reach out to your local group, church group and congregation. If you're connected to any sort of support group, AA, NA, tap into all of those resources, because right now is when we need all of the help that we can get.
For sure. For sure. Now, kind of changing gears here, I want to talk a little bit about the medical professionals. Like, we're seeing a lot of like what's going on in the news about the medical professionals, the nurses, the doctors being like overworked. What are you seeing kind of in their mental state, and, how's their mental health right now going through this?
I cannot speak directly, but I would imagine, given what I know about the situation and my personal experiences and seeing what I see on the news, is they're in fight or flight mode.
Right.
And they're in constant adrenaline right now.
Right.
A lot of fear, which it's legitimate, because they don't know if they're going to get sick, if they're a carrier, if they're carrying it to their other patients, and if they're carrying it home.
Right.
They are missing that personal connection with their family. So I'm blessed that I provide telephonic support to our patients for mental health, from my house, and I know I'm not being exposed, so I can hug my husband at the end of the day. I
Right.
can cuddle with my daughter. They can't do that. They have to stay 6 feet away during this entire time. And that physical connection, there's research supporting that we need like 8 hugs a day.
Right.
To really be to just get like the endorphins flowing, like you mentioned before. But there's benefits to physical contact. And so, to be honest, I'm really concerned about their own mental health. They're probably not sleeping very well. On top of that, they may be feeling guilt.
Right.
About maybe like, oh, I could have done more. Maybe I didn't handle it right. They have to see families and give them bad news every single day.
Right.
They have to, there's some now being forced to ration ventilators. And I couldn't imagine having to be on that that group of people who says, who is going to live and who is going to die today.
Right.
And that's a really heavy decision to have to live with and to have to do. So there's a lot of different factors going into the mental health of the medical community. And I'm concerned about them. I mean, not only right now, because right now they're on adrenaline, they're fight or flight. The real, I don't want to say consequences, but there's going to be after effects.
For sure.
After all of this is over, come hopefully summertime. I don't know when it's going to be over, but whenever it's going to be over, that's when they can hopefully relax a little bit and process all of the things that happened. And that's when we start to see things like vicarious trauma set in, post-traumatic stress disorder set in, and that could affect the way that they cope possibly for the rest of their lives if they don't get help and if
Right.
they aren't allowed to process those feelings.
But we also got the physical aspects too. Like that's the mental, but we also got, because of being in the fight or flight for too long, your adrenal glands start to drain out, right? Because that's where your cortisol levels are constantly coming from. So eventually that drains out and then affects like your liver, your kidney, like all the other, organs in that area. So being under this much stress for that long of a time and period, because normally they're for like, quick incidents. You're going to sprint, you're playing a sport, you do all that, you get a little bit stressed, and then they have time to recover. Well, these guys are going for 12, 18-hour, 40, even 48-hour shifts, if not longer, and they're go, 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 right? And like you said, they're constantly on this adrenaline rush, fight or flight, on top of, like you said, not only just their work, but their personal lives of, I can't get little Jimmy or little Jane, sick as I go home. What am I going to do? I miss my husband, my wife, my significant other. What about my family member? I have a senior citizen in my family, or maybe someone that has an autoimmune deficiency or issue. I can't be around them. Like, constant stress from, like, I couldn't consider it like a 365. It's all areas where, some of us deal with certain areas in our lives, but they're dealing with their whole entire life is wrapped around this now.
Exactly. And so it's really hard and they're in a really tough spot. And, I don't know what the answer is, but I know that they at minimum need the equipment that they need, the face masks that are going to properly protect them and not put them at other risks due to hygiene issues. I've heard that that's a concern, having to use the face mask repeatedly, and they're not designed for that.
Right.
And it can lead to other illnesses as well. And I'm not too sure about all of the specifics on that, but that is one of their main concerns, is why they're advocating for themselves now. And I'm worried that they're going to actually, like, I don't want to, I'm not saying that they're going to protest, but but it wouldn't surprise me, and I hope they don't. I'm not spreading rumors, but
well, let's talk about that. Like, and not you're saying anything, but I've been actually hearing on the news now that nurses are now calling in sick, right? Both ones because they're getting the virus and whatever, but also because they're so worried that they potentially, if they go in, they're going to infect everyone. So they're so anxious about going in, not having the right protection, not having the right equipment, to be, vulnerable to being, compromised, getting the COVID-19 virus, and then who knows about the side effects after. But they're actually now starting to cut back, like, on their own shifts personally, not the hospitals, but we're finding a shortage. And I know they were talking in the news was old age homes, right? Senior citizen care centers. Some hospitals are having problems with this now too. So with the influx of patients, and now the staff reducing themselves out of fear, that's going to put such a more overload on the healthcare system.
It's true. And the healthcare system is already overloaded.
Right.
It's already dysfunctional on a normal day. And I'm seeing that too with the people that I work with, is that they need legit medical care. Like, maybe they're having some shortness of breath or some chest pain, and we recommend that they go and get it checked out by the doctor, but they're like, no way, no way, Jose, am I going to and risk getting sicker or worse, and like, I'll just wait it out. And that's another concern that I have too, is people not seeking medical care because they're scared, or because I don't know if they'll get it. It's hard to say.
Well, these are things that now they have, like telehealth, they have your local hospital or doctors you can call in. Like, there's all the other resources if you're too nervous to go into the hospital itself. And I get it. I understand the concern. There's other resources that you can call in and say, look, I have a fever. I have this, I have that. Mm-hmm. What do you think? And they can tell you, look, yeah, you know what, you need to go to the hospital, or you know what, stay home, quarantine yourself, take care of yourself like you would normally do if you had the flu or cold, and see how it goes. Right. Mm-hmm. And they can assess that. I'm not saying to do that, but when you do that call, at least they can give you better information before you just jump into the car and go to the hospital.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't even know if they would take you. I guess it would depend on the hospital, but they do recommend you calling ahead and only going if it is really an emergency.
Right. And I want to put a context here for anyone that's watching this. If it is a true emergency, call 911.
Yes.
Right. Like,
yes.
don't kind of go through the telehealth and all that and kind of wait. If you're having problems breathing, respiratory system issues in that, call 911. Like, do that. Don't kind of, wait and say, well, you know what? I'll just call telehealth. I'll wait on hold. It's a 45-minute wait. I can't breathe. No, call 911. Like,
right. Yes. But if you have changes, or if you notice slight, something weird, you can call the 24-hour nurse.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's available for you if you have health insurance.
Exactly. And I know, going back to the nurses and kind of the challenges that they're having, I know I watched an article, or I watched a news article, or a news video yesterday, I think it was, about Spain. And they were saying that the nurses cut back in the senior citizens homes so much that some of the people that needed care stopped getting care and they started to pass away. Right. So,
yeah.
And these are the things that we have to look at. If we don't do the things that we need to do as a society of, staying home, being quarantined, and there's an increase in the numbers, the nurses are going to feel stressed. The nurses are going to take care of themselves. It's understandable. And then also now we start to have this, challenges of, people passing away, issues in the hospital. I was hearing about concerns about, due care, in the sense of people not getting the exact care they need because everyone's rushing around and just kind of quickly, assessing and, doing their point. And then you're kind of being put in a gurney in a hallway and not being truly assessed. I know a colleague of mine was talking about one of their family members had sepsis, but they took him in, had a cold, all that, and then they send him home. But they actually had, from their blood work that they got a couple days later, they were septic. Right. So, and now, of course, knock on wood, they all came out of it. They were able to take some antibiotics and clear their system. But as we know, if someone's septic, that could lead into severe health issues and concerns and organs shutting down. So these are the concerns when a health system is overtaxed, things like this get missed.
It's true.
Right?
It's true. And that's a very valid concern. Yeah.
Right.
And reality, unfortunately.
And that's something that, through this conversation, which is good as looking at that, we need to kind of have that conversation, look at, and what I consider is the we, and all concept. I is you look after myself, then you look at we as your local family, and the all is the community. Right now, the all is very important because everyone is trying to do their part. And the ones that are not, guys, step up, kind of, you have to, isolate yourself, quarantine yourself, do the 14 quarantine, make sure you're not going out and meeting and coffees and, parties and all that and doing all those things.
And that's why it's been so important for people to stay home and to do the self-isolation, because if we, like it's been said every single day, all day, if we can just slow the rate of this, then hopefully the problems that we're talking about right now will be reduced.
True. Exactly. So
we'll
now,
see. Yeah.
So we're talking about kind of the medical professionals with the general population, what, going through COVID-19, what are some of your recommendations, starting today and going forward?
For
mental health,
wellness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, definitely set some boundaries around how much you're watching the news and how much of this awful information that you are getting. Set a limit on it and pay attention, like you said, to your anxiety level. So, and your limit may be different every single day. Sometimes I can learn a lot and know, kind of delve into it about what's going on so I can educate my patients. Other days it's a tough day and I just can't, do anymore. And that's okay. It's okay. The other thing is reaching out. So relationships are extremely, extremely important. We all need relationship in our lives, and positive ones, if possible. Try to avoid the people who bring you down or require more energy or make you more tired.
Right.
Try to find people who lift you up. Get out of your head and try to help other people.
Okay.
So if you can just think of ways that you can make other people happy. So send some cards to the local senior center. You can volunteer. There's plenty of volunteer opportunities going on right now. I know I've seen some, like you can drop off boxes at people like seniors' homes, or you could volunteer on a call line. There's a lot of different ways that you can serve. You can reach out to your neighborhood and see if there's anyone who needs help. I know for my neighborhood, they have started this chalk artist side. They draw on the sidewalk with their sidewalk chalk, and they make pretty pictures. So it's kind of nice just for people walking around outside. So just
Right.
any little things like that that you can do to give back will make you feel better.
Now, what about
And
scheduling?
scheduling, so definitely, it's the boundaries. So set aside, you can just create a schedule for yourself as far as like, okay, I'm going to allot so many hours to this, so many hours to this. And it depends on your goals too. So each of us have different goals that we're doing. So for me, my schedule fortunately has work, but if other people are maybe looking for jobs or developing a new hobby, or maybe creating their own business now, creating their, it just depends on what your goals are. So get clear on your goals and what you need to do, and make sure that you're in the right mental space to do that. Figure out what resources you want to get you from where you are to where you want to go, and
Okay.
schedule your day that way. I don't know if that's the answer you were looking for.
No, it's just one of the things I heard, and that's what I was trying to see, like, what your thoughts were. That is that, for people that are working, that work now have been, in offices and now working from home. One thing is a great thing is to create yourself a schedule, when you
Yes.
get up, when you shower, when you have breakfast, when you start your day and your work, when you take your own breaks. If you have to, you take lunch, take a lunch. Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
could get stuck in your own office or home and then not realize it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You haven't got up and moved. Right.
It's
So,
true. Yes.
so schedule yourself out, take breaks when needed. And that kind of helps with the mindset of working at home and that type of pace. Now, on the other side, people that have been laid off, schedules really help in the sense of get exercise, like you're saying, get exercise, kind of get some movement in your body. Look at studying, or even if you're doing job searches, set some time aside, maybe an hour to 2 hours a day of updating your resume, kind of getting out there, contacting recruiters, job sites, kind of doing that, but then only do that for an hour to 2 hours and then do something else, study, look at maybe if you're looking at a new skill, certification, education to help you in your career, or maybe you're
Mm-hmm.
switching careers, whatever that may be, study for an hour to 2 hours, kind of give yourself those chunks of space that more consistent versus trying to consume it all at one time, right? That
Yes.
I'm going to study for 8 hours. Well, that's not obtainable over long periods of time, right? So something that you can do, and then, have some family time, have a break, be able to go for a
Mm-hmm.
walk, get in the sun, do all those things. Scheduling, I think it's very important for sanity and for your mental state too, because if you can do that, then what happens, you have control of your environment, what you're doing in your life, and then everything is in a routine that can help make you feel more comfortable of what's going on.
Yes, that's true. And it reminded me of two things. So for on my work calendar at noon, there's a little meditation reminder, and it dings at me. And so almost every day I'm like, oh wow, it's almost noon. I haven't even had breakfast yet. And so so it just reminds me to, like, it keeps me on track.
Right.
And so I don't get into my flow and forget what time it is, like you said. And it's true, as far as the working from home and setting boundaries. So the way that I've done it is I'll do, my daughter wakes up at 7, and a lot of times I'll be up earlier than that, from like 6 o'clock. So 6 o'clock, I'll do my self-development things. There's some career goals that I'm working towards. 6 to 7, do that. She wakes up at 7 to 8, 8:30 is my daughter time. And then she goes to her grandparents. And then from 9 to 12, working. And then when I get my little dinger, I'll have some lunch and maybe go for a jog or something to get my body moving, because the body works so much better when there's blood flowing through and when we're energized. And then I can come back, refocus, until 5 o'clock when I go get my daughter. And then it's dinner time and family time and off to bed.
Right. It's perfect. Right. And that's an amazing schedule for yourself. And I'm sure it works. Right.
Mm-hmm. But everyone's going to be different. And this schedule is constantly changing. So it just depends on what your goals are and what you need.
Now, one thing I want to add to people that are listening to this, if you're new to working at home, try to designate an area in your place, your apartment, that is your work area. right? So what happens is it's not your living room or your kitchen table because you don't get a break, right? Work is work, home life is home life. That's something I learned from different books I was reading about kind of being efficient, scheduling your time and doing that. If you can do that break time and you stop work, you can shut the laptop down. You can do that where people will start working extra because the laptop's there. Oh, I forgot to do this one thing. And oh, if I just got another 5 more minutes, which then becomes an hour and a half, right? If you have your office, like I have my own office, once I'm done at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, depending on the nights, I'm done. I get out of my office and then I'm done, right? I don't go back into that office. And that helps to give me my work-life balance. And that's hard sometimes when you're working from home because you don't realize, well, I can just go in there and sneak in there and get, 5 minutes of work done. Well, it's 9 o'clock at night. Then 9 becomes 11 and all of a sudden you're not sleeping. And, the whole thing starts to roll out that now, you're not healthy because you're not taking care of yourself because of scheduling. So that's kind of some recommendations for people that are working from home, that are newly working from home and haven't kind of looked at organizing. Try to, if you can, depending on the size of your place, create a separate space for your work environment.
And that's helpful for me to hear because this is new for me. I'm at my kitchen table / living room, and I felt guilty pushing my daughter's toy chest aside, making space. But I feel you've given me permission. Like, it's okay. Just, we're going to have to rearrange the living room a little bit. So at least I have some space to designate as work. And then I can at least leave this side of the room to when it's time to play.
Exactly. And it kind of gives you that break, right? Because I know for myself, when I first started working from home years and years ago, I would work till 3 o'clock in the morning some days just because I would get busy. I'd get deep into something and I wouldn't look up. And all of a sudden I look up and I go, oh, it's only 11 o'clock and it's 3 in the morning. And
then
I'd have to start my workday around 7 a.m. It's like, I'm only getting 4 hours sleep if I'm lucky. So then I had to say no, and I started to read books about, working from home and doing all that and being efficient, a 4-hour work week by Tim Ferriss and all these other books. And also it was like, okay, I got to have a work-life balance because I'm going to make myself sick. And this goes back to mental health. If you don't sleep well, you don't eat properly, you don't do that, it wears on your mental, your mental health, your logic, your analytical skills. And that's something, you guys, that are watching this, think about, you got to make sure you get your rest too. All this stress and anxiety will help, cause sleep issues. Well, if you can't sleep properly, the stress will affect your thinking and your analytical and how you deal with stress. So having that work-life balance, having that area that's kind of designated, being able to get proper sleep will help with the amount of stress that you could take on.
That's true. Very good point.
Right. So I think there's some good points for people that are working from home and kind of dealing with this. Now, what about nutrition? You're talking about kind of people looking at, exercise, working schedules, all that. But what about eating?
My eating?
Well, not your specific.
I don't know if you want to know about that.
we'll open up a food journal. So what'd you eat for breakfast? What'd you eat for lunch? But in general, for mental health, isn't having a good diet, a good healthy nutrition?
Yes, it's true. That is not my forte, but I do know based off personal experiences and the little bit you could probably speak more to nutrition than I can. But yes, when you have a healthy meal, your body doesn't have to work as hard to digest it. So I'll use myself as an example. I had French fries and chicken wings the other day, and by the afternoon, I needed a nap.
Right, your 3 o'clock crash.
Exactly, as opposed to when I'll kind of snack throughout the day. So have a healthy breakfast, a little whatever healthy, something for lunch, something at 3. I don't need that afternoon nap. There's no crash when I eat the healthy foods. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about nutrition.
Well, no, it's good, right? And I mean, because you're a social worker, I'm sure you're seeing it. The people that have better healthy habits deal with stress better than the ones that don't, have more stress just on general. Like, and don't get me wrong, everyone has their, potential chemical imbalances, lifestyle factors, all those other things. But if they can eat better, they are able to deal with it better. Right. And
yeah, I guess I don't see too many of those people in my office because they're eating so healthy. They don't They
Right.
don't need me. They don't need to go to the doctor that much. But yes, it's true. I know that, general health projections, people who are unhealthy when they're young, their health kind of declines at a very slow rate, as
Right.
opposed to people who are healthy their whole life. Their health more of just like at the very end, it takes a steep dive. So they're not as sick for as long,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So they're not typically like the chronically sick people. So a lot of my patients have heart disease, diabetes, COPD, and all of those come from bad diet and lack of exercise.
Right, lifestyle factors.
Exactly.
Now something on the nutrition side, so you guys know that are listening to this, the unhealthy diets, and we're talking about like unhealthy fats, lots of heavy meats, not having it in a balance, fast food, chips, pop, snacks, things of all that. What happens is your body has to break those down. So the more energy your body uses to metabolize, the less energy it has to actual function. Right. And then the more nutrients that are nutrient dense, like fruits and vegetables, right, things that are high dense nutrients, will give your body more energy so you can do more with it. So that's kind of the basic concept. So when you're dealing with stress, if you can have a better diet of eating more fruits and vegetables, and eating healthy meats, in moderation, of course, not having bacon for breakfast, a big fat chicken for lunch, and then having a steak for dinner. Yeah, by 3 o'clock, you're going to be crashing. You're going to need a coffee just to keep you up. But I mean, having a balanced diet in that way, with a lot of fruits and vegetables, which it's going to help you to deal with, the toxicity in your system, the stress that you're dealing with, the overload in the system, your anxiety, and all that will give you that balance. And I think that's why I wanted to bring that up, to see if you're seeing that as a social worker. I've seen that when I was a holistic lifestyle coach, as well as, working with clients. The ones that deal with stress are ones that are very healthy, exercise, they talk to maybe even a therapist, and they have a healthy nutrition, like a diet protocol, that they're eating healthy foods. They're eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, drinking lots of good quality water. And you can see like the amount of stuff they can take on is tremendous, right? You go like, how are you even standing? Right? I'd be in a corner going, oh my God, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. Right. But they're like, okay, let's go. Let's take on more. Like, bring it on. And it's because they've developed that foundation to be able to take on a lot of energy and a lot of work.
So many benefits. I just want to go grab like a banana now. Thank you.
You're welcome. So with COVID-19, what are your personal feelings and thoughts about this? Because I mean, we're all kind of going through this together, and I know you're a social worker and kind of being bombarded from clients and, different areas, but what are you personally thinking about this?
So my personal thoughts is, I mean, it's just crazy. There's been nothing like it, in our lifetime, and hopefully there won't be anything like it, again in our lifetime. And it's really a lot to take in, and no one really knows, what to do exactly. And we're all trying to just get through this together. We're all really just doing our best. And I am impressed with the amount of community that I've seen, as far as people reaching out and taking initiative and doing so many things to help other people when they weren't doing that before. And I just feel like if that had been going on the whole time, there would be much less incidences of, depression and mental health issues and isolation and loneliness.
For sure.
So I hope it continues, the support.
And I think what
COVID. Sorry, I don't want the COVID to continue. I want the support to continue.
Well, yeah, and I think what I was going to bring up is I think it's shining a light on different systems and different things are going on, that now it's changing how we work for companies, organizations, for mental health, and for their health systems. I think it's all shining a light on these different systems. So now it's going to be different after this is done, after the COVID-19 pandemic is finished, how
for sure.
Everything kind of changes, how it functions, how it processes, from companies to health systems. I think it's going to be a real big change, which sometimes you need a little bit of a challenge like this to really shine a light on things that need to be fixed immediately. And then, you see the evolution of, a lot of great things come of it. I mean, someone was talking to me the other day and they were talking about, well, where do plants grow? Well, they grow in soil, which is, a lot of fertilizer, which is basically shit, right? So when you deal with that, you deal with those challenges, they grow and the flowers become beautiful and have great nutrients and all that. Well, that's the analogy we got to think about now. And that twist of the paradigm and mindset is that, yes, we're going through the muck. We have to look after each other. But once we go through, there's going to be a lot that's going to grow from this.
Yes, definitely. And I'm really excited to see what changes happen as far as, because we have been forced to be much more technologically savvy now,
Mm-hmm.
and where we weren't before. We were, having meetings that maybe didn't need to be had. There was just a lot of shifts that I think are going to happen, and I'm wondering if companies are going to realize, hey, our employees were really great kind of working at home. Why do we really need this gigantic office for them to commute to?
For sure.
And can we have more remote workers? Can we traffic, reduce the smog? Spend more quality time? Can we have family game days where we just stay home and don't do anything? How is this going to change our society and how we function? So it'll be very interesting.
It will, for sure. And I think, was it Germany? I think they're on a 4-day work week where
Okay.
they have and I think and I'll have to look this up. I think they work Monday to Thursday. They have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and they have a minimum of 4 weeks vacation. So all these things that, some of the European countries are doing, we might just look at incorporating them also on top of what you're saying, work from home, because like you said, and look at the footprint. If the footprint has changed now where you can still run your business, you can still be efficient, you can still make your profits and, meet your numbers and your milestones, but by your majority of your staff working from home, why not? Because that's going to make you more profitable. Like you said, you're not going to have this 4, 5, 6-story building or multiple locations. You might be able to, downsize and be more efficient and be more profitable, which then again helps everyone.
Exactly. So it'd be interesting to see what happens.
For sure. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and we kind of, dripped about it, little, teaser about, but was the domestic violence issue. I'm hearing more and more, watching the news, seeing more articles about that now since the COVID-19 situation, that police and 911 operators are getting more domestic abuse calls because of this, pandemic, which is really sad. You're seeing kind of some of the aftermath or current math, I guess you'll call it, as we're going through this, of what's happening. Now, have you heard anything about the increase of domestic violence and domestic abuse?
I have,
Okay.
yes, and it doesn't surprise me at all. And I'm not surprised because of all of the things that we talked about. So if you are a person who cannot control their emotions
Right.
and deals with anger in a form of violence, then this is the perfect storm,
Right.
because there's financial problems going on. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. Could be paranoia. There's people who are just stressed. I mean, the number one reason for divorce is finances, and here we are. It was I don't remember the exact number, but the highest amount of people filing for unemployment in the history of the United States.
Wow.
It's massive. Yeah. And so there's this perfect storm for people who don't know how to cope and take out that anger on other people. Additionally, now we are forced to be with each other 24 hours a day.
Right.
And people who maybe their escape was going to work.
Right.
And now they can't do that anymore. And when you are in a relationship that has domestic violence, there's usually the abuser and the victim, and there's going to be the abuse cycle, which,
Okay.
you can look this up, where it's like the honeymoon phase, everything is going good. And then someone, like the victim, feels like they have to walk on eggshells. Like, okay, things have been going good for a little while now. I don't want to ruffle feathers. I don't want to make anyone mad. But then something happens, like everything going on right now, something happens, and there's an abusive occurrence that takes place.
Right.
And then there's the apology phase, like, oh, I'm so sorry. It was because of whatever they in the moment. Um, is because of whatever happened and it won't happen again. And then you go back into the honeymoon phase and it's a circle.
Right.
And it's a cycle. And a lot of times people who are in that cycle don't recognize it.
Right.
Until someone like this conversation, until they point it out, like, oh yeah, that is kind of what happens. And it's a cycle and it's never going to end, unless there is a change, like intensive therapy, unless there is a separation or, something that happens that disrupts that cycle. But it is important to know that a lot of times domestic violence, the abuse escalates over time and it gets worse. And a lot of times the people who are at the highest risk are the people who have left their abuser.
Okay.
And that's when they're in the most danger, is after they've left the abuser.
Oh, because the abuser comes after them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because the abuser a lot of times feels like if they're not going to be in a relationship with them, they're not going to be in a relationship with anybody.
Right.
And how leave me? And you're not the one that's in control here. I'm in control.
Right. So there's kind of possession.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
And so there's a lot of agencies who work with survivors of domestic violence. They create a whole safety plan. They know how to be discreet. They know the dynamics that are going on. So people who may be in this situation, they can text for help. They can call the numbers. They can look on the website for help. It is good to have a safety plan, and they do know how to get you out if you need help.
Well, I remember when I used to work actually physical security, they actually mentioned like there's, again, hotlines, things like that. But if you're in a high escalated situation, call 911 and order a pizza.
Oh.
So they mentioned that because what happens if you're, the person's escalating, and I'm going to say
right, yes.
Male or female, doesn't matter. Call 911 and say, yes, I'd like to order a pizza. They're trained to kind of go to ask you the right questions on the other line, and they're going to be yes or no. And all you have to do is kind of say, yes. Is your abuser right there? Yes. Are you in danger? I think it's kind of the first question. Yes.
True, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
What's
your
address? What's
Yep.
your address? Oh yeah, my address is this. Just like, so you're kind of ordering a pizza, right?
Exactly.
And can you order pepperonis? Can I have pepperoni sauce? And they're like, okay, yes, we get you're under stress, and they kind of go through that call because, again, depending on the level of escalation. Now, if you need someone to talk to, there's, like we said, there's all these counseling lines and all that. But if you're in these heated, escalated situations, that's one option, is call 911 and order a pizza, right? And I want to say this out straight. Don't make it a joke. Like, and it's not like something to make a joke about and call 911. But if you're in this situation and it's escalating, you're feeling you're being threatened or abused, do that. That's another way that you don't alert the abuser, the attacker, that you're calling 911, and then the police will come out and they'll help you deal with it.
That's a great point and a great tip for people to know. And, you can even share it with your loved ones if you know someone who might be in that situation as well. And the other important thing it is that I think we should talk about with this issue is why people may not leave their abuser. Okay. So a lot of times we want to do the victim shaming. Well, like, why did they stay? They should have just upped and left. It's not that easy. A lot of times people who are physically abusive are also mentally, emotionally, and financially abusive as well.
Right.
And so they may be mentally and emotionally abusive to somebody by telling them, I'm the only one that loves you. Nowhere else that you can go. You're dumb. You're not going to be able to take care of yourself on your own. Like, what do you think you're going to do? I'm the one that makes all the money, or I'm the one who manages all your money. It's all in my bank account. And so that's why I mentioned that the agencies know how to get you out of that situation, because a lot of times it takes time. Right. Sometimes people will set up a private bank account that the abuser doesn't know about, so that they do have those resources that if they needed to go to a motel or a hotel, they can leave immediately, because sometimes they literally don't have any money because their spouse has it all from them. And also too, there's children that people needs to consider too. Are you going to take the children? Are you going to leave the children? If you leave the children, are they going to then be abused themselves?
Right.
And so those are, just a few of the concerns that people have who are in that situation, and why it's just not so black and white where you can't just up and leave.
Yeah, and it's true. And I read a book I was looking at for now is I think it was The Positioning, and the Art of Influence. These two books, they were talking about the psychology of dealing with people that have been victimized. And a lot of times when you start to pull them away, they'll go in deeper, right? They'll go, no, but he loves me, but you don't understand. And they'll actually dive in deeper to that abuse because they don't want to be wrong. They have maybe a psychological dependency on them, something along that line. And you're saying, yeah, but Jimmy, he's a bad guy. And they're like, no, he's great. He only beats me on Tuesdays. Every other day is fine. And it's like, the rationale is like, but you shouldn't get hit at all. Like, why is Tuesdays the day? Well, it's just he has a rough day and, Mondays are hard. So he comes home and ties someone that gets a lot of alcohol in him. And then on Tuesday, he's very violent. Yeah, but that's not acceptable. But you can see the psychology is that they're trying to rationalize it's okay, right? And then sometimes, like you said, they need professionals to work with to be able to talk through that and come to an understanding for themselves. It's not okay. You don't deserve that. You have more value. But like I said, it takes a professional, right, for them to speak to be able to kind of walk them through that and see where maybe their abuses have come from past, like from, as a child, and these are just carrying on. And that's now just the current abuser in their life. So there's many different factors, but like I said, going back to the news, I think it's shining more of a light and more of the calls because everyone that's being isolated right now are now in these close proximities and there is no break, right? There is no, I'm just going to go to the gym. No, I'm just going to go out with the girls or, I'm just going to go to work. It's, you're now home 24/7 for how many weeks with these people, and then escalate, and then the emotions start to escalate, the stress starts to escalate, right? And then, these guys that are people, I'm not gonna say guys or girls, but these people that maybe are more violent or abusers now start to escalate because they can't deal with that emotion. They can't deal with the energy. So it's sad. It's sad to see. Yeah. I think the number they said was like 40 to 60% of an increase right now.
Wow.
Of abuse calls.
So. Yeah, that's a lot. And ironically, or I don't know if it's ironically, but interestingly enough, the child abuse cases have declined. The calls in have declined because children are now out of school, and the top reporters were the teachers, right? Because they would see the children every day and they could see, oh, little Johnny has a bruise that looks suspicious, or they're dirty, or they're not getting baths. Right. And so now, those calls have declined, but, rest assured the abuse has not. Right. If anything, it's escalated, and I'm concerned for children in that situation, and also older adults too. Okay. I haven't seen the statistics on elder abuse, but I would imagine they would also decline because healthcare professionals are not going into nursing homes or visiting people in their houses unless it's an emergency. Right. And, working with hospice, I would visit people and I would see neglect happening, or maybe emotional abuse, or like physical abuse that could even be between the spouses. Right. It's domestic violence and elder abuse because they're over a certain age. So it's just important to know those. And I think along the same lines, we should clarify for domestic abuse. You should know that if children, I'm speaking from California, right. So I don't know if this is accurate everywhere, but at least in California, if your child witnesses domestic violence, that is considered child abuse because it's emotional and it's traumatic. And I mean, imagine being a little child and seeing one of your parents get hurt. Right. Or being yelled at, violently yelled at, or softly thrown. Like, for sure. And you feel very powerless and scared. And it's not, it causes a whole bunch of problems. That could be a whole nother, a whole college course. But, right. So, just so you know that that's not good. And then also too, if the abuse could lead to them also getting hurt. If children try to intervene in any way, they could get physically hurt as well, even if it's not intentional. If somebody falls and the child is right there,
Right.
it could lead to injury.
Oh, for sure. And then, like you said, the mental, emotional abuse that carries on, like that abuse can carry on to their relationships, as teenagers and adults, and then how they interact with other people, right? And that could continue the process of the cycle. So
Yes, it's traumatic. And a lot of times people who are in abusive situations, whether they are the abuser or the victim, they it's their normal. Sometimes they feel like that's just the way that relationships are because that's the way that their parents were, or that's just the only relationship that they have seen.
right.
Sometimes people like foster kids, sometimes they haven't been able to see a relationship, or if you had a single parent, you maybe you haven't seen a relationship. So people just don't know, or there's that traumatic experiences. They think it's normal.
Right. Yeah. And that's the new norm, right? Versus what actually is supposed to happen. And some people, and from my conversations, all that, a lot of them, when they go to therapy, and start to talk to someone, it really changes their paradigm and framework. They go realize, oh my God, I can't believe I was actually abused. That I thought that was just normal through my life. Not everyone got cigarettes put on out on their skin. No, that's not normal. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Like, and I'm using that as a bad example, but that's an example. Like, I've heard stories where because of that paradigm and that lifestyle they lived in, they thought that was normal, right? Until someone was able to talk and go through talk therapy or maybe see a psychologist, and they realized, wow, that wasn't normal. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I thought that was how you loved, how you cared, how you looked after someone. And they realize that, no, it's not. Right. And they have to learn everything all new again and kind of let go of their scars and their triggers from the past. So
yes, and those are all very traumatic experiences. There was a very large study, ACEs. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey study. But they studied the amount of traumatic experiences that you've had in your life. It correlates with long-term health effects and mental health effects. So if you've had like 3 or more traumatic experiences as a child, then you're more likely to suffer from, X, Y, and Z. I don't have the study in front of me, but
right.
But yeah, so just to let you know that the experiences in childhood are very real, and they even impact your DNA and how you cope with things, how you deal with things, how your frame of mind is, your confidence, everything. So it can really, really impact it.
It's funny you bring up the genetics, because my wife is actually studying epigenetics right now. Right. And she's getting ready for like a course and she's going to be teaching, but even like the epigenetics of how you think and what you do in your environment will affect your DNA. But they also, just to let everyone know here, you can actually reverse that too through, it's not like, okay, I was, 12 or 13 years old and there was abuse in my family or in my household. That's how I am. That's how it's going to be. No, you can actually change that through a lot of work, but you can actually change that and restructure that through talk therapy, exercise, kind of all the protocols that we've kind of been talking about right now. That can be reversed and changed and make you kind of healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically.
It's true. Even things like for my own example, I was raised by a person with alcoholism, and that has certain effects on a child. So some of the effects that I had were I'm never good enough, and everything that I do is not good enough. So I was, a straight A student. I was an overachiever, but I still had really low self-confidence because as a child, you're always trying to figure out like, okay, if I'm a better kid, if I'm good enough, then they'll stop drinking.
Right.
Then I won't be stressing them out, which is completely illogical as an adult. But, that's just how children think. And so it did take me a long time to overcome that and to, learn the self-confidence and just be okay with, with my best.
Right. But that's the thing, like you said, like you worked on that, which is great. And if people have things that are not functioning or working in their lives, especially with this COVID pandemic, and I want to point this out, a lot of times like pandemics and things like this, a stressful situation, shine a light on areas in your life that are weak or challenging. those are the ones that now make a note and start working on while maybe you have some time, maybe you're off work, whatever. Talk to someone, kind of deal with that, because now we have a little bit more time, help to improve yourself and your health and your well-being, right? And do that, right? Because like when you get stressed, a lot of things will come. Like I know for myself, I've dealt with, stressful eating when I was working and all that. And I got up to I think it was 240 pounds at one point, where I would be sitting at my office and I'd have rows of bottles of Sprite and bags of chips, and that's kind of my staple for eating. But I would just eat, I'd be working away and I'd be drinking these bottles of pop, 2-liter bottles of pops, and drinking them and eating chips. And it was just because I was the way I deal with stress. But then I went through a lot of, healthy lifestyles, kind of nutrition courses and things like that, and realized that it wasn't the point where I was the food, it was what I was dealing underneath of, like you said, the stress of work and not feeling good enough and not doing that and the pressure. That was my vice to go to. And it had nothing to do with my food. It had to do with my stressors. Once I relieved the stress, the food went away. I didn't need them anymore. So when you see things like that, you're your triggers that you're like, oh my God, I find I'm going to bed, and I'm sleeping, 12 to 14 hours. Okay. What are you stressed about? What are you worried about? Start writing them down, journaling. Or maybe you go out and you start to eat a lot, or you start to drink more in excess, right? Don't worry about the drinking. What are you stressed about? Work on that first and the rest will go away. Because when you're not stressed, maybe I just drink socially, but I don't need to drink that much. It's not as fun, right? I don't need to hide things. And that's what I find with food, stress, gambling, things like all of food, drinking, gambling, all that stuff. A lot of times it's not that's the issue. It's the underlying stressors and things that people are dealing with to escape. And those are their escape kind of, items that they go to, or different, activities. So something, you talked about kind of dealing with your childhood, so for myself. And one of the courses I remember taking when I was going through my holistic courses was overcoming addiction, BC disease. And the first thing they talked about was don't talk about the addiction. And they're like, I'm like, yeah, but you got to talk about the drinking. You got to talk about that. And they're like, no, that's not the issue. There's an underlying issue that's what how they're dealing with it, how they're coping. You take away their coping mechanism, and then they're going to get even more stressed to go to something else, or even go into more drinking. Talk about the underlying stressors, and that the other stuff will go away, the superficial stuff. And I was like, that's kind of cool. And then when I first dealt with people in that paradigm, it was interesting on me how fast those things would go away. Because I didn't realize myself. I'm like, oh my God, yeah, we got them eating right. We got them exercising. We got them doing all that. Their stress is going, they're feeling good. They're talking about that. They're writing journals. They're going, yeah, but they don't drink now, or they drink only socially. And they're like, they used to drink so much at night or, through the weekend, but now they're drinking maybe every Friday night, they're having a couple drinks. And you're like, okay, and how's things going? Oh yeah, just a couple of drinks this week. Oh, but I thought you had 40 ouncer and this and that. Oh no, I just don't need them anymore. And you see how people get healthier.
That's great. Yeah, it's their coping mechanism. It's their way of escaping reality. And it's interesting because once you learn all of that, for me, it increased my empathy for the people who have addictions, for people who, the stereotype of homeless people is that they're all just want to use drugs and party, which is not true.
Right.
Most people want help. They just don't know where to go or how to get it. And I'm worried that we may see an increase in homelessness,
right,
given the jobless or the job loss. I know that the government is taking some precautions against that, but some people are already living paycheck to paycheck and just one paycheck away from losing their house. And we see that all the time. And most people who become homeless are just homeless for a short time.
Right.
And they just need some help. And a lot of times to cope that they do turn to the drugs and the alcohol and it's to cover up some sort of pain that they've had and not been able to cope with.
Right. No, and it's understandable. And that's why, hopefully you kind of take our advice and recommendations that go the other route first: eating, nutrition, exercise, going for walks, talking to people. Try to use those tools first before going the other route. Because again, even talking to people, you might get opportunities where someone might need something like even data entry, something along the line. Hey, we need someone on the phones. We'll pay you minimum wage or whatever, but at least they'll get you kind of through this hump. and then you'll kind of get back up on your feet again. So there's all different areas where some companies right now in business are flourishing, and then some, of course, are taking a little bit of struggle, right? So, just kind of being mindful of where potentially maybe work from home stuff, data entry, just trying to think phone, telecommunication stuff,
There's an app that you can use to do, what's it called? Like project-based work. So I've seen, like, if you need a web designer, you can get on the app, and people who need just a web designer can do that, like contract-based type services, which I thought was pretty cool.
Right. Like kind of freelance websites and things like that.
Yes, that's the word. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's things like that. Like there's just so many things out there now that's available to try to get out there and, get some work done. And like you said, some phone support, things like that, telecommunication, even support lines right now are looking for people. So, there's options out there. Just, try to keep your mind open that you're not just that person. I only work as an executive, but I lost my job. Right now it's okay. How do you get the bills paid? How do you kind of get everything covered? And then you'll get back on your feet. You'll be an executive as soon as it's over. Just kind of make sure you kind of take care of yourself and your family and the people around you.
Yep, exactly. Stay busy, and it's not going to be one coping mechanism. You're going to need a lot of tools depending on what's going on and how you're feeling and what's appropriate at that time.
No, so true.
And also I would encourage people that if you do have extra time, reevaluate, what you're doing. Is it still serving you?
Okay.
Is this a time that we need to say, in 5 years, like my vision is to be doing X, Y, and Z. Is the path that I'm on going to get me there?
Right.
Is it going to get me to my purpose? Is it going to get me to what I was put on this earth to do? We all have innate abilities and experiences and talents and passions and dreams that are just ours and that only we can do. But a lot of times those are scary.
Right.
And they're out of our comfort zone, and maybe they sound crazy, but everything that we have in this world was once in someone's imagination.
Right.
So if I would encourage your listeners to just kind of reevaluate and set their goals, like what do they want to do? Is what I'm doing now, is that going to get me on the road to where I want to be? Because, coronavirus is temporary.
Right.
It's going to be a couple months. I don't know. You mentioned a year. It's temporary.
Right.
So we have life after this. And, what are we going to do to get us there to accomplish our goals, and what's going to bring us the most fulfillment?
Right, for sure. And one caveat to that I want to add to people: if you're looking at changing careers or you're even being an entrepreneur, make sure you have a business plan. You talk to someone, you kind of do all the steps. Don't just jump, right? Don't jump and invest like $10, $15, $20,000 in this idea that you haven't tested out, right? Don't kind of do that. And I've seen too many people jump too fast and not build something up as a business. They kind of take a hobby and think they're going to make money off of it, but don't have a good business strategy behind it. And I'm not saying, I want to be very clear, I'm not saying you can't do it. It's the foundation you have underneath it that makes it work, right? Doing your due diligence, making sure you have your systems in place, making sure you have your business plan, doing all that first, right? And then testing it out slowly and building it out. And like, if you're off work right now, take your time to build it out, right? But again, don't invest too much money into it, more time in your own sweat equity. And then as money comes in, reinvest into the company and start doing that, right? That's kind of one of the things that, as I worked in a marketing company, in my own marketing company, and consulted with different people, one of the things I saw too much was people investing tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars into their business, thinking, oh my God, this is going to work. And then end up them kind of going bottoms up because they didn't make the sales, the money didn't come in, right? And it could be 6 months or 1 year later. And it's because they had a great idea. The execution wasn't right for that business. And sometimes you have to walk before you can sprint. So, and again, I want to say anyone can do any business they want. It's the business behind them, the business strategy and the systems to make it work, right? And taking your time and not jumping too much. And that will get you to your successful strategy versus having to kind of go, I'm going to open up, a website development company. Okay. Have you ever developed a website? No, I've never developed a website, but I'm going to do it. Okay. Well, maybe you should develop a couple websites first and then see what it takes and how the time and the cost and staff and, okay, let me do that. And all of a sudden now it changes their paradigm versus going, oh, this is hard,
Oh, yes.
This takes a lot
That's a
of
good
time,
point.
like makes a lot of effort. And yeah, I realized that I was charging, like, I'll give an example. Like when I first did that, you charge like $500 to $1,000 to do a website, but it takes 30 days to do it. Well, you realize, your hour per hour rate, you might be getting paid $10 an hour,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And you're like, okay, I can't sustain this, and I have to look at my costs and my rate and all that. And if I'm going to start to build out where, $10 an hour went to $50 an hour very quickly to $75 an hour, because I started to learn the business and kind of go, okay, I understand the overhead and what it costs and software and licensing and all that. So that's what I'm saying. Take your time and build out the business first, right? And slowly develop it out. And then, start to kind of, like that hockey stick, go, 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 go. And then you'll see that big curve and it'll start to go up once you get everything going. But don't jump. Like I've seen too many people. I hate my boss. I hate my career. I hate my job. I quit. I'm going to open up a dog grooming business. And they do it. And they're like, oh my God, I'm struggling. I can't pay my bills. Build up the dog business on nights and weekends until the points of self-sustaining, and then say, okay, you know what? I'm finished my work. I'm going to be a dog groomer. Right. So things like that. Right. And like I said, for the
Definitely.
COVID-19 pandemic, yes, we have a lot of free time. So take your time to build, but take it slow, right? Make sure you have all your systems in place. I know I had a consultation this morning, and someone was asking me questions about business, and we had to take a step back and look at their high level business, their name, what they're doing, their systems and all that, where they wanted to kind of get going. So we're going to go to sales, we're going to do that. And we're like, okay, hold on, let's take a step back. And when we did, they were like, okay, hold on, we got to go back to the drawing board and like rethink about this and restructure it, because all that had to be done first before they could start going out to the market.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I don't have a business background, so all of that sounds
Sounds good.
logic. I mean, yeah, sounds good.
You're like, yes, do that. Do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, do exactly what Brandon said. Take it slow, and if you need to talk to somebody, give me a call. We can process your feelings. Yes. I think that we covered a good amount. I mean, we talked about a lot as far as mental health and the abuse, issues and things that are changing in society. I think my last thought is just, it's okay to not be okay all the time.
Right.
And it's normal, actually. No, none of us are okay all the time.
What?
So
You're not okay all the time?
No. It takes a lot of work to be okay most of the time.
And I want to add that in. I think a lot of people don't realize this, is that the work is beneficial. It is a lot of hard work, but I think you get a lot of benefit from it, right? And don't shy away from it.
Yes. Are you talking about work like on yourself or social work?
On yourself. So like on yourself, working kind of like with social workers or even psychologists or talk therapists.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot of work, but the benefits you get from it and the life that you get from it after is so beneficial.
It's true. Yeah, it's true, because I have my own worries as a mom, as a spouse, as a granddaughter for my own family. But my work as a social worker, it forces me, to really get out of my head and listen to someone else's story. And I have to make sure that I have the mental capacity to take on their emotions.
Right.
Because, they say that joy shared is doubled and grief shared is halved.
Okay.
And so by me taking on some of that grief and the worries and the anxieties of my patients and families, it helps them be in a better mental state to do what they need to do. And, at the end of the day, after hearing like 3, 4, 5, having really hard discussions throughout the day, I need to know, like, okay, it's been a hard day. My go-tos are like, I'm going to go exercise. I'm going to walk the dog. I'm an introvert. So all of the people interaction is tiring for me. So I'm just going to go and be quiet for like an hour.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's good. I mean, I'm optimistic. I think that there's going to be a lot of changes coming through. I'm not so naive to think that we're all going to be okay all the time. There are going to be hard times ahead. and to just expect them
Right.
and to be prepared and to be in the strongest state that you can right now, so that when the hard times do hit, then you're best equipped to handle them.
Perfect. No, that's good advice and a good recommendation for people to kind of look at to do this overall, because again, we're hearing, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, whatever this may be through this pandemic. But if you're in that mental state and you're working towards that and always working on it, then at least you can sustain it. You can be able to get through it versus the other side of the fence. If you don't work on this, if you kind of let it go and start going into stress, it'll be like a ball that just grows and grows and eventually it's going to explode.
Exactly. Yeah. I do have one final thought as a
Sure.
healthcare worker.
Sure.
Everyone can have an advanced directive for healthcare.
Okay.
And that just states, like, if you wanted to be intubated, if you wanted the full treatment, if you want CPR, or if you don't want all of that. So even if you don't put it in writing, you can at least have the conversations with your loved ones and just say, hey, if something happens with the COVID, like, please, whatever it is that you want or don't want.
Right. And have that conversation, especially the ones that have health issues or health concerns, right? At least have those conversations. I know it's awkward. It's uncomfortable, right? Because you don't want to think about the, family member passing away or getting in a medical situation, but you got to have those conversations so what needs to be done. I know when I dealt with my grandmother who had cancer, I was kind of her medical proxy, and we had to have all these hard conversations, like what to do and resuscitate and, do not resuscitate. And, what happened in this situation and that. And we had to have them because when the time came, they were looking at me going, what do we do? Right.
Yep.
When she signed a DNR, you're going, she signed it. Right. So do not resuscitate, just kind of let her pass. And so you had to know that. But again, I know it's uncomfortable conversation. I get that, depending on, who you are and what situation you are. Try to have that so at least you're kind of informed, and knock on wood, nothing ever does happen. But if it does, at least you know.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. This was an amazing conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. I had, it was a really good time.
Awesome. So guys, I just want to finish off, this has been a great conversation. If you have any questions, comment below. I know Catherine will reach out, like if you have any questions, especially different areas you want to contact, or you need some information in the areas of where state or country that you're in, we'll do our best to kind of get that to you and just really help with this COVID-19 pandemic and with the mental health. It's about a community coming together and really help each other. So I just want to leave off, guys. Just don't forget, software is hackable, being connected vulnerable. I'll see you next Daily Cyber.